Okay.
And welcome again to another live broadcast of Fourth Dimension Paranormal Radio on this good day of October 21st of the good year of the Lord 2014. And Debra's with me. How you doing there, Debra?
I'm doing good, thanks.
Yeah, we've been talking all day, haven't we?
On and off.
On and off. About lots of things, haven't we?
Oh, yeah.
Well, a lot of the radio shows are kind of like making goof and gags now again, like kind of making it scary, and then talk about, what kind of candy they'll pass out on Halloween.
Mm.
Yeah.
You don't like Halloween, though, so we're not going to do that.
I don't. Well, for a myriad of reasons. One, as a youngster, I didn't like dressing up. And there's a story behind that. And number two, I remember it worked well. I was at my brother's Halloween party, and I went over there, the only one undressed up. I was in normal clothes. He got very mad at me, so what I did is I went in his room and put one of his neckties on around my head, and I came out as a pirate. And, I got laid that night. So it worked. The pirate stuff used to work. Didn't cost me a dime, and I still had my look. All right, everybody, how you doing? We got all that funny stuff out of the way because we were talking about funny stuff before the show and how silly some of the people can be. But just to get it off my chest, Deb and I and everyone's going to be remaining anonymous. There are teams out there reciting that they have best practices. Let me remind, if you find out what best practices is, you have a consortium of groups or colleges or what have you, depending on the field it's in, and then a group that is considered a consortium voted in or at least agreed upon by all the other groups as sort of they know a lot more. For some reason, they've been around longer, they're well educated and so forth, and then you submit white papers to these to the consortium where they may or may not approve a best practice, but they define what they are. So the teams that are purporting best practices, ask them what that means. I'll tell you what it means for us is that there are several standard rules we have on an investigation which defines as evidence. If a K2 meter blinks one time walking down a hallway, Deb, is that evidence that there's paranormal activity right there? No. A lot of teams, most teams will say, oh my God, I just walked through a ghost. The rule of threes is usually the best way to do something like that. So that's why it's best to carry more equipment than just your cell phone, which a lot of people do. Leave the cell phones off and leave them downstairs in a bag. Because cell phones will, when they're just sitting there getting an email or transmitting and you don't even know it, sets them off. The other thing is a consortium is that would be distributed to teams that are at least semi-qualified who understand what they're doing. So anyway, it's not going to happen in the parafield. The hobbyists are still out there, and we've noticed because many places that we, again, have tried to get into have been raped and pillaged by other groups, and they think we're just one of them. And one of the biggest problems that groups have is they don't do follow-up. They don't come back to the original client with the evidence shaved down, and then they can describe it to them and get their take on it. evidence review is one of the most boring things that a team can do. And I recommend highly that it's done together when you do it, maybe at a library with headphones or something, so everyone can see each other, not speeding through it on fast forward. Evidence review, be careful, because a lot of people say, I didn't hear anything on 20 hours of tape. Well, that's a red flag there. And maybe they didn't, but anyway, enough of that. We try to keep it neat and clean, and we try to move toward the science and the spirituality. Today, Deb, of course, well-known medium, and you are also in my area. So what if we were going to talk about a couple things today. One, preparing for an investigation, the things that we do, and two is the original walkthrough I like to do with a medium. I like to kind of combine the dead files, can't remember her name, Amy, yeah, and do that first without you knowing anything, and then wait a week and then schedule the actual investigation so we can digest what you think, and then you may have a subsequent dream to it, and throughout the week it may play out and you'll have some sort of idea what might be there, where the potential hotspots will be, and what we may have to look for. And that's a great guide if you have a good medium. And Debbie, I know I've seen your page. I've seen people respond to you and said, man, you're right on. And when I met you, you were right on too. So you passed my litmus test. I don't need to say that anymore. So anyway, let's talk about that to start with. But before, on your page, I didn't get a chance to read it. David's been a very busy boy this morning. I want to talk about it because in the almost immediate family, there was a death. 54-year-old man who is related around here. I'll leave it generic. And I want to ask the question if they make visits within the 1 week, but we'll talk about that in a bit. On your page, Deb, you talked about a visitation from something a week ago. Can you expand on that?
This was just Sunday. I had done a couple of readings. I met at a Fridays restaurant, did a couple of readings, and they went really well. And then there was an older lady in her probably 70s sitting across from me. And she looked at me and she smiled, and I smiled back after the ladies had left. And she says, hi. She says, are you a counselor? And I said, well, no, not exactly. And I told her what I did and that I was a medium and an intuitive and et cetera. And she said, oh, really? That's wonderful. She said, do you mind if I come over and sit with you? And I said, no. So she came over and sat with me. And immediately when she sat down, I said, my name's Debra. And she stuck her hands out, palms up, on the table. And she said, can I pray with you? And this is a 70-some-year-old lady, so I have no problem with it. And I said, okay. And I put my hands in hers. Now, immediately when I put my hands in hers, I felt like I was transported or nothing else was around. I was in there was nothing there. There were no waiters, no other tables, no anything. I only felt her hand. And she's telling me, she's saying this prayer, but she's thanking me for doing God's work. She was thanking me for helping the people that I help and asking for his blessing to help me to continue to do that. And she also prayed for my fibromyalgia and for some other things that there's no way that she could have known about. Now, after we both had said amen, she says, bless you. She says, keep doing what you're doing, and you're on your path. And she got up and she gave me a hug, which was amazing. But when I opened my eyes right after she said amen, she had a huge white light. I mean, like, brilliant white light around her. And I said, you're an angel. And I meant it at the time sort of like, you're a sweetheart, you're an angel. But then the white light was going on, so I really wasn't sure what was happening. So I quickly gathered my things after she had walked away, and I said, I need to catch up with this lady and find out what her name is and such. I want to know more. And so I grabbed all my things, and this is a, high 70s-year-old lady, so she can't walk that fast. And it was within seconds. I gathered up my coat and stuff, put it on, grabbed my books, and took off. And I couldn't find her. So I went out to the parking lot, and I had asked the lady actually on the way out the door if she had seen the lady go out. And I said she had a leopard print coat on with a really nice gold earrings. And she said, no, I didn't see anybody like that. And I said, okay. So I went out to the car, and I sat in the car for a good 10 minutes watching the door and watching the parking lot to see any cars that were going to take off. And I just felt this great need to find her. And I didn't find her, and I never saw her again. And that night and the whole next day, I pretty much cried. I'm not afraid to say it. I pretty much cried all that night and the whole rest of the next day. I was so overwhelmed. I don't even know how to describe the feeling other than if you've been saved before, that tired feeling or that, you've been through something.
Now, with that we would obviously say as a personal experience, and right. I believe you entirely now because I know you. And the fact of the matter is, could anyone else, do you think, in that restaurant see the white around her, or do you think, being a medium, you're the only one who could see that?
I don't even think we were in the same realm. I think once she took my hands, I wasn't even in that restaurant anymore.
Okay. And I remember you saying that you just had the hands, but there was no one else in there. Were you still in a restaurant, or you didn't know?
Well, that's where I grabbed her hands, was at the table, because she was sitting right across from me. But as soon as she took my hands, I didn't see anybody walking. I didn't notice anything other than her words and this bright light. And next thing I knew, when she had let go of my hand and we got out of the booth and she gave me a hug, I realized I was back at the restaurant. But I didn't feel like I was in the restaurant when I had her hand.
I'm going to make a bet that, knowing you as much as I do, you were crying because, A, you really would like to be more with her, and B, the experience was so out of the paradigm in which you exist that you were in an oh my God thought moment, and way too much to process, but it was very good. Now that you've gotten over it, do you feel very good about the experience that potential angelic spirit sat down with you and talked?
Yeah, totally. I mean, at first, at the point when I went to the restaurant, I was considering giving up on doing a lot of different things because it was like wearing me out, and I didn't feel like I was helping enough people, or it wasn't being as successful as I wanted it to be to help as many people. And that basically turned me around and reaffirmed what I believed in and what I started out to do.
There you go. And, someone came by and kickstarted you. I'm getting feedback on your side, so make sure somehow those speakers are covered up, because I'm hearing me come back a second later.
You sound echoey. I don't know if I sound echoey. I should ask everybody.
No, you sound great. And in fact, if we were getting some negative hints off our sidebar here, we got a few people who listen who would tell us that there were some things in the audio going bad, but obviously it's working well today. Probably because you're speaking of that story, the angel in which you met could be overseeing the whole thing. Nothing surprises me anymore. I saw your page, and again, your page is what's the name of it? where these stories usually reside on?
Beyond the looking glass.
Beyond the Looking Glass.